This is important. Oh, thank you. Recording's in progress. This is important because you have to discuss this. This is a group. This is really a group context. You want to discuss this with your supervisors. You want to discuss these timelines. Think about how realistic these things are. My dad says if you have a good idea, you should be able to get somebody else to agree with it, right? So you should be able to run it past some folks and kind of troubleshoot it, because you're also always looking at yourself and doing self-reflection, self-evaluation to make sure that your own so that you're not transferring or engaged in counter transference, you're not projecting, and you're not influencing your own timeline according to your own lens. In fact, you are using your empathy skills, and you're making sure this is a realistic timeline in your client's context. That's important. And I also think it's important to do these timelines for yourself, to do these maps. These exercises are helpful for yourself inside of your own relationships and inside of everything else that you're doing too, whether it's anything that you're pursuing career-wise or education-wise or individual relationships. That's right.
Using a strengths-based approach to engagement, identify areas of success in a client's timeline and build on these examples. We actually did.
Yeah, we hit that already. Let's skip that. We did that last time. But it's important for those of you who weren't here earlier. This is just about this, always using timelines to identify strengths in your clients' lives. So a lot of times folks have strong areas and they didn't recognize it. And to the trauma-informed care people too, a lot of folks don't recognize experiences as trauma. So when you ask a person, have you ever experienced trauma? They may say, no, I never, a lot of folks grew up in the hood or grew up around circumstances that they didn't recognize horrific experiences as traumatizing. So they may not have acknowledged it or even interpreted it as trauma at the time. So you want to make these timelines of experiences, not just of trauma, because whether or not they have acknowledged and decided that it's trauma or can call it trauma isn't relevant to your structure up front. What you need to know is when these experiences happen. If it's about, a lot of folks, they asked about intake on the last session for trauma-informed care. Intake forms, a lot of y'all's groups do ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, and also some trauma screenings. MHFA gives you some different ways to kind of approach that too. But these areas of, I'm reinforcing that point to say, you have to be careful in timelines and when in reflection when you're asking people about experiences, because you want to know more experience than you want to know. Well, you need to know about the experience. You need to know how to interpret it, but it's more important to know about the experience for you for building your timeline. That's important. The TIC people, the trauma-informed care people, can go a long way with that. I'm not going to beat that horse, but it's important. Let's rock.
Resilience?
Yeah, let's operationalize resilience. Okay, so resilience is like typically a slush term, right? Because people talk about resilience in very general terms. Renee, you missed our slides about the psychophysiology of resilience and how it's happening with epinephrine and norepinephrine, and it's all about your dopamine reward systems. And so there's a lot of real stuff going in your head that rewards resilience, and because it's old brain, it's happening back by your spinal cord in the back of your brain. So this is really old stuff, and it's happening way before our executive functioning. So we're actually backtracking, thinking about what's happening. We're trying to figure it out. We're kind of trying to rationalize why we're behaving this way, because we're already behaving this way, right? That's what happens to a lot of us, because it's going on in the old reward-based system. You can affect these systems. The brain has a lot of plasticity. There's something called cross-modal plasticity that allows your brain to exercise in different areas. And if you give it the opportunity and train it as such, it will adapt and adjust. So you can really make a lot of progress in your, progress is a bad word, but you can make a lot of difference in your reward system as you start to train these and be intentional about mindfulness exercises and breathing exercises. It's not hokey. This stuff really works. It's crazy, but it really works. All right, go.
All right,
so operationalize resilience here. Here's what we can actually do with resilience.
So for R, reframe the problem and find reasons for hope.
Yeah, okay, so reframing is about restructuring what the problem is in the first place, right? So somebody presents, usually clients present a circumstance and it's very emotionally packed, and they present that circumstance. what you can first do is to reframe that you have to do something called decatastrophize, which is to reframe that in a less complicated context. I should have said simple. So you want to reframe it in a simpler context that you can actually put your timelines into place whenever possible. There's some reframing strategies, and we have a couple of techniques to do that. I don't have the slides here, but I will give reframing strategies. Oh, actually, I have them in that manual. Yes, we'll give you reframing strategies as well. Let's go.
All right, empathy, a culturally informed understanding of how the individual or family has arrived at a perilous point that threatens his or her family's emotional or physical health.
Right, now empathy is important because you have to have this kind of cultural understanding of this. This isn't just a didactic or an academic understanding. This is an empathetic cultural position that you can assume, because again, community health workers tend to reflect their population. So the idea is that they bring this cultural perspective into the context, and we can use that then to make these general assessments.
Stress tolerant, a set of techniques to reduce the somatic or physical response to stress. These include breathing exercises, relaxation techniques, and exercise routines.
Fighter pilots do this, right? The folks, so they hook these folks up. They hook people up. Military does a lot of studies on resilience, which is where a lot of this stuff comes from, because they want to know how people maintain in really high pressure and high stress situations. So like these fighter pilots that just lost one engine, they're being shot at, they got to keep their cool while the plane is going down so they can figure out how to do this. And they try to figure out what's happening inside these guys, inside of these folks' head, right? There's a lot that goes on with being able to control the somatic nervous system. And there are trainings that you can do. The highest stressed people do a lot of these high stress exercises. Surprisingly, physical exercise helps you with stress. Breathing exercises helps you with stress. And not only that, the focus on doing them both at the same time. Once you start to bring them all together, your physical posture, right? You stand with proud chest, with shoulders back, your chin is up, you're breathing, your zone is open. And what's fun is as you start to just talk about those things, what you'll notice in a social context is that you become more conscientious about it. Just talking about standing up straight, just talking about standing up straight and making say, let me stop slouching over here. There you go. So it makes a difference. And culturally, we've gotten away from a lot of that. We used to have a lot of rules where people say, stand up straight, don't slouch. That stuff is actually good for you, because mindfulness in the context of being in charge of what your body is doing gives you security, and it also gives you control. And that's a lot of what you need to stay in a responsive position. Remember, the objective here is to respond, not to react. That's right.
I identify prevalence and risk of the problem in the population being served. Review current scientific knowledge. For example, prevalence of high-risk sexual behavior.
There's a lot of good information for you there, but the point is that you need to review some data, make these data-driven decisions, stay hip to what's going on out here so that you can actually make these true assessments. And you need to follow up, I don't want to say academically, but you need to follow up situationally so that you can review some statistics, review some white papers if you need, some techniques of other community health workers, whatever's actually working. You need to really take that and evaluate that on a regular basis and integrate that into your technique and strategy.
All right. L, limit the effect of automatic thoughts. The trainee learns to identify automatic thoughts and limit his or her immediate response to them. Okay. This is a set of cognitive skills based on the Ellis ABC model, activating event behavior consequence model.
So that's an academic model, right? And so, but what it means is let's see how far do I want to go into this. All right. Activating beliefs and consequences model talks about how there are immediate responses. Remember we talked earlier about how we want to get to responses and get away from reaction. So when you're reactionary, you are triggered on whatever else is happening. So that is almost a knee-jerk thing. It's action reaction. It's happening, and then it's happening too. This happens, then this happens, because this happens, so this happens, then this happens, kind of deal, right? You want to get yourself out of that loop as soon as possible, because you don't want to be in that feedback zone where you're caught in And we know a lot of negative feedback zones. I'm sure we can all think of negative feedback loops that happen all around us all the time. The reason that happens is because no one is removing themselves. They have to keep reaction. There has to be a constant chain of reaction in order for reaction to work. You can be conscientious to remove yourself from that. And in a therapeutic context, especially when it comes to clients and things, you need to make sure that there's no kind of action reaction in terms of transference and countertransference, and make sure that you're not being triggered. Because when clients see those triggers, they a lot of times feed on those triggers. And that's actually what keeps them in their loop or in their spiral and whatever. And they're kind of dependent on you going back and forth with them about that. If you could present a secondary posture to them, it throws them off because they don't really know how to react to that response. They know how to react to reactions, but they don't know how to react to responses. And in that place, once they're kind of off their square, because you have to break that cycle before you can actually begin to communicate. So once they're out of that kind of negative feedback loop, you can then engage moving them in a positive direction, which is the whole objective. That's right.
I identify protective factors. A culturally informed exercise to identify historical family influences and resources in the community being served that mitigate against developing a behavior-related illness. Example, strongly held religious beliefs can mitigate against suicidal thinking.
Now, you don't force that on anyone. So if they already have them, you use them, right? But you don't bring them in kind of to kind of do anything else. The idea here that religious structure or faith-based connection to a faith or the appreciation of a higher power, these are all things that are considered strength-based approaches. They're things that you can use as a CHW to kind of move folk along a continuum. And religious, most of the time, the religious context is built on these kind of moral structures that allow for forgiveness and all of these other things that are inherent into the work we do. So it's important, especially that's why I like the faith-based presentation for lunch. I thought it was great because the church has historically played a big part in kind of community healing, and it's something that you can use from a community health worker context too, especially if they throw that out there as a strength in their context.
The emotional rating and mindfulness. This process teaches how to rate and monitor one's emotional reaction to real or perceived threats.
Everybody needs to learn how to do that. We all need to learn how to rate and monitor our reaction to perceived threats. The better you get at doing that, the better you will be at communicating whatever it is you're trying to do. And again, I don't care who you're talking to. This is just good stuff. This is stuff that just helps you more effectively communicate, because you can not only understand the position you're coming from, keep yourself from reacting and allow yourself to respond, but you can seize teachable moments. And that's a big deal with all of this. That's right.
Normalize the problem. This involves the skills of
Decatastrophizing.
That's
right.
And removing the powerful emotional impact of a problem when this is possible.
So we have to decatastrophize with my mother a lot because she's very, oh, this is awful. What are we gonna do now? And you're like, Mama, okay, milk this. We can get some more. And okay. It takes a lot to get, she gets really upset about things. And she's, again, if you talk her down, she can realize that it's not as much of a catastrophe as she is imagining it to be. That's actually a word, that's actually a real word, decatastrophizing. So people have to learn how to decatastrophize a situation. This is not a catastrophe. The milk is sour and the store is around the corner and we have $3. What are we doing here, Mama? And she's, well, what are we gonna do for breakfast? But again, so for her, we need to figure out ways to, first of all, it's hard to get out in front of that because it happens automatically. And the best thing to do is to take the milk out of the refrigerator before she notices that it's bad. If you can do that, that's the better thing to do, because it's hard once it's the problem. But we all have to work. It's my real life example of how we work on decatastrophizing on a lot of different levels. So not only from clients in crisis, but a lot of times, a lot of folks just have a hard time with things that things that the others of us think are not such a big deal. We have to understand their perspective on this stuff and understand where they're coming from, exercise some empathy. My sister is much less tolerant of my mother's catastrophizing than I am. I'm much better equipped to deal with it. And my mother's much happier living with me than she was living with my sister because of that right there. So I'm saying that to say this works. And if you do it, you know, it will help in general relationships with everyone. So yay, decatastrophizing. All right.
C, challenge and change talk. Embrace the challenge of meeting a difficult problem rather than giving in. Conceptualize the problem, use cognitive dissonance skills to arrive at new solutions to the problem. Identify and reinforce key phrases that indicate the individual is motivated to change.
Cognitive dissonance skills, another big word, but kind of big concept, easy to do. So cognitive dissonance, there's a old civil rights worker named Stokely Carmichael, Kwame Ture. He wrote about something called heightening the contradiction. Cognitive dissonance is what happens when something in your brain isn't adding up. Your brain likes to be right. I should say it differently. It likes to be consistent. It doesn't like inconsistencies. So when you present inconsistencies, the brain wants to reconcile. One of the big movements, one of the big parts of the civil rights movement in the 60s was to heighten that contradiction inside of individuals. So to say, listen, if there is a natural contradiction going on, if you raise that contradiction issue, that individual will have to reconcile. Now, it doesn't mean they're going to end up on the right side, but it does mean they will reconcile it. They will end up with a unified thought. Either they're going to be all the way left on it or all the way right on it, because your brain does not like to be split on issues. It's really interesting. If you bite into an apple and it tastes like an orange, your brain has a real problem. It's like, stop right now. Why is this? And you have to come up with an answer for that. Or your brain will not let it go. Right? It's just your brain has to figure things out. So inherently, we are always kind of making sense out of things. That's why it's so important to understand this kind of emotional response, this transference, countertransference. You are making sense out of these triggers that you are experiencing, but you're rationalizing. So the difference between rationalization and justification is rationalization is kind of back-ended. So you're taking these things and you're saying, oh, well, I must feel like this because of that. So we have to be very careful when analyzing ourselves. And we have to start with ourselves when it comes to trying to deal with anyone else. And that's in terms of any relationship, any interaction, whether it's with a boss, a colleague, or a client, or anyone else. That understanding of yourself inside of that empowers you, once again, to actually be in control of the dynamic and also to set the boundaries. Arguably, you can't set boundaries until you can do that. My mother also has boundary issues, but whose mother doesn't? But you can't, my mother can't set boundaries. My mother has no boundaries at all. She's in everybody's space all the time, and there's nothing you can do about it. But it's okay. It's okay. It's not okay, but what can you do? So I'm saying that to say that at least to maintain your sanity in that environment, you have to understand what's going on inside of them. And then you can understand what's going on inside of yourself to understand how you should be responding to at least do damage control or damage mitigation.
All right, and the final E, evaluate your concept of the problem and your proposed solution. Experiment with the solution and reevaluate your plan.
Renee, you know my last letter is going to be evaluate and experiment. That's right. So what we're doing here is at the end of your plan, after you do all of this resilience stuff, I like this little acronym here because I think that it's important to actually use these words that we are using. So this structural way to operationalize resilience in your treatment plans with your clients and inside of yourself. Operationalizing just kind of means making it work, making it real. So as we take these terms from abstract constructs and we kind of bring them into the real work that we do, we can kind of use these tools and use these techniques to get better at kind of being who we are. And the more we understand ourselves and the more we understand the context that we're living in, the better we're equipped to communicate with everyone else that we're talking to. So, excuse me, that I think we're going to wrap this up right about then. So let's see, come on.
Useful resources for coping with stress.
Come on, useful resources for coping with stress. Y'all take these home with you. Let's go.
So this is just a slide with some different exercises. We have take breaks to relax and unwind through music, sports, gardening, or new hobbies. Find new ways to safely connect with family and friends, get support, and share feelings. Treat yourself to healthy foods and get enough sleep. Take care of your body and get moving to lessen fatigue, anxiety, or sadness.
Very important. Self-help. A lot of our community health workers are being overlooked. They do a lot of really good work, and this is hard work. It's close to you. Our CHWs are closer to clients than everyone else. They get called in the middle of the night when clients are in crisis, when clients are going crazy. I don't know how they deal with it, but they get called all the time, and they have to respond. They have to set boundaries. They know when to cut that phone off and when to respond. That's right. They have to do that, but they also have to be available, and they have to develop and work these relationships at every step. It's important for us in supervisory positions for CHWs and folks that are doing trainer protocols to remind folks that are supervising, and remind the staff that our CHWs need time. They need unwind time. We need check-ins. We need to check in with them regularly. They need to be able to do soft handoffs. If they get to a position where a client if they're noticing some triggers with the client, they need to be able to hand that client off. You need a soft handoff so that CHW can transition, and then you also need some space for that CHW to be able to debrief for themselves. If they can work with a mental health professional, that's great. If you get folks that can come around and give them secondary time to kind of vent and process this, because they have to work with all of this stuff when they get home. This is heavy on all of us. We all deal with clients, but the closer you are, the heavier the lift is. So I think that one of the most important things to reinforce with supervisory staff is that CHWs need to be checked in on regularly. They need to be supported, and they need to be cared for, and they need to be caring for themselves. And they need a lot of space to be able to do that. So that's something that's hard to legislate. It's something that you just have to communicate and get staff and the board to actually appreciate the real work that they do, because so much of it goes unnoticed. When CHWs are really doing their job, folks are showing up for appointments, folks are getting vaccinated, and everybody's like, everything's going great. What's the problem? And you're like, well, this is why it's happening. You think this boat ain't just floating itself. So the idea that they are integral to meeting the bottom line, to adherence, and to also to patient satisfaction, your consumer satisfaction surveys and everything. The better your community health workers are trained and engaged, the better your outcomes as a clinic and as an organization. Which concludes our presentation today. What else we got? We got one more slide?
We have 10 more.
Come on, talk to me. Please. Yes, please. And all of these slides will be on our website, I guess by next week sometime, maybe. Oh yeah, I think Annabelle is going to put everything up next week. I'm pretty sure of that, but I'm sure they'll be available to you.
Yes, we did.
There we go. So yes, it'll be there, and we'll have them up. Give us, I guess, maybe a week or so. Maybe give us a week to have them up, but all of the slides will be available for you all, and the reportings and everything, and all of these. And if you just reach out, I got you. Just let me know what you need. We will get it right to you.
Yeah. All right, critical workers, care for yourself one small way each day. Take breaks to relax and unwind. Did we say that?
No, we didn't. Keep doing this. This is what you all need to do.
Take breaks to relax, unwind through music, sports, gardening, and new hobbies. I think
okay. Maybe we hit that. All right, what else?
Okay.
But do this for yourself. Self-help is everything, and don't let anyone tell you not to. You all need this. This is a part of your jobs. It needs to happen in order for you to function.
All right, family caregivers. Care for yourself one small way each day. Take breaks to relax and unwind through yoga, music, gardening, or new hobbies. Find new ways to safely connect with family and friends, get support and share feelings. Take care of your body. Same thing. Take care of your body, get moving to lessen fatigue, anxiety, and or sadness.
So the physical thing is important too. I know it's hard to do this one, that's a hard one to do, but physical activity makes a big difference. And posturing while you're doing it. As you're doing your yoga, your back is straight, your chest is out, you're standing up straight, you're doing these deep breathings, you're connected with the universe, you know, you're feeling your aura, you're talking in your universal voices, you know, all this kind of stuff. That stuff is really important. I didn't take it seriously as a younger person. I wish that I would have. I'm much more grounded in my old age, and arguably, I don't know if anybody would agree with this, but I think I'm much easier to talk to. So, you know, I don't know. I think so. But I do think that these things are very important, and I think that the work that CHWs do is integral. I know that again, some agencies, a lot of times we have a hard time recognizing all the work that everyone does to really make it happen. But these are the true grassroots frontline connection. And this is the folks that are on the ground that are reaching out, and they're our first primary point of contact. So the combination of the MHFA, the motivational interviewing, the kind of self-help skills, the timelines, understanding transference and counter-transference, your skills with the oars, with positive talk back and strength-based approaches, your empathetic approach to things, not being judgmental, all these kind of stuff, grounding yourself, your breathing exercise. As you kind of do these things one for one, you will find that you are much more grounded and much more still within yourself, which is a strong foundation to stand on. So the objective is to make sure that we are all kind of working together and ultimately as healthy as possible, because at the end of the day, healthy people make healthy choices. That's the plug for our campaign. We have a Healthy People Make Healthy Choices campaign that all of you all will be rolling out respectively, but it's a simple context, right? Healthy people make healthy choices. If we're expecting our clients to make good choices, we need to help them be healthy people. It's a complementary context. The more healthy we are, the better our decisions are. And you know, hurt people hurt people. So that's where we stand. I think that's about it. I'll take questions. Come on.
Well, young adults.
Oh,
So
I
that's
forgot
a little
about them.
different.
Yeah, kids. Yes.
Young adults, care for yourself one small way each day. Find creative ways to safely spend time with friends, like virtual movie parties. Treat yourself to healthy foods and get enough sleep. Head outdoors and get moving. Make time to relax by reading, listening to music, or exploring a new hobby. And then the last one, get on FaceTime with someone you're not, to remember that you're not alone.
That's a good thing. And let me speak about sleep before we end. Sleep is very important, something that I took for granted for a long time in life. Athletes understand it and appreciate it. You know, high functioning people understand it. Something very interesting happens when you sleep. During the second half of sleep, just about, you know, we lock into these circadian rhythms, we go into this deep REM sleep. The second half of REM sleep, like going toward the morning, is when you revisit experiences from the day before, but you do it without an emotional response. So it's actually a time to reframe and rethink ideas and to rethink situations that you had previously experienced. You should try to sleep in silence. Try to sleep without distractions if possible, if you're able to do that. Because when you do that, your body does a couple of things. It allows you to regroup, resituate, and then think again about these things that you had just experienced the day before. You experienced the day before, but you do it void of the emotional response. So the phrase "sleep on it" is really a good phrase. It makes a big difference. If you can sleep on it, you should. If you can, my grandmama used to say, you know, if you had to discipline a child, she said, if he needed a beating today, he still need it tomorrow. It's an interesting context. Smartest lady I ever met. That's true. If you need to beat him, you'll still need to beat him tomorrow. Go to bed, beat him when you get up. But if you don't need to beat him when you get up, you probably didn't need to beat him yesterday. So I don't know if my grandmother went to the 6th grade, but I know she was wise. And I tell you what, that is absolutely true. It took me till I was this age to figure out the psychophysiology of what she was saying, but that's the science behind what she was saying. So, you know, there's a bunch of active stuff that goes on when you sleep. Allow your body to sleep, allow your body to recover. And don't ever forget, if he needs a beating yesterday, he'll still need it tomorrow. I'm closing with that.
And I have a real life experience with that.
Thank you.
So I received an email and I woke up, I read it like at 1 o'clock in the morning. Hit my nerves, hit every nerve in my body. I immediately, but then I'm like, okay, no, like this, I knew that was my response. So my reactive response.
Reaction, right? That was your reaction,
My
not your
reactive
response, right?
response. So I said, I'm gonna go to sleep. And if I wake up and I still feel like this, she's getting this eat. But happy to say I woke up, I had a different feeling and I was able to kind of tailor the email a little better to the situation rather than my reactive response.
Perfect
So I was
example.
able to deliver my information so she could hear it instead of, again, my reactive response, which would have sent probably the communications back and forth, which we discussed
Chain reaction.
a couple of slides.
Right. That's a perfect example. And I witnessed this. The email this morning was much better than the response from last night. It was much better. There you go. See, this is why we sleep on this. So I love that. Thank you so much for that real life example. Again, there's science to back up on this stuff that all of our grandmothers told us 100 years ago. But the fact of the matter still holds tight. If you can sleep on it, if you can step back, you can regroup, you can adjust, run through your resilience acronym there, do all of those steps through that, and then decide how you're going to respond. And once you do that, that leaves you in the control position and you're outside of that action reaction chain response, which is what we're really trying to get better at doing. That's it. Let's do a breathing exercise and we'll close it out. Let's go. Last breathing exercise.
So stretch your hand out like a star. Get the pointer finger of your other hand ready to trace your fingers up and down. Slide each finger slowly. Slide each finger up slowly and down. Slide each finger up slowly.
Oh, and each finger. Slide. Oh, okay. I understand. Slide your finger up.
Breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. Put it together and breathe in as you slide up and out as you slide down. Keep going until you have finished tracing your hand. And so the question is, how do you feel now? Are you calm, or would you take another 5 minutes? You look like you got some calmness. I saw it in your body.
And the reason that I like that one is because it combines both of them. It combines your physical motion. You have to be deliberate. Once again, we're being intentional. You're combining that with your breathing, and you're coming in and then you're exhaling. And you can do it as many times as you need to. If you need to come back across your hand a few times because you got another email, then come on back. You can do these things at your desk. You can do them in your car. These are great exercises, and you can find them anywhere else.
Online.
All breathing exercises are good. Become one with your space. Embrace breathing. Breathing is so good for you. It's the key to everything that we're doing, and it really supports everything that you're doing. So if you learn anything today, learn about breathing. Learning is important to focus on your own self and your own response criteria so that you can avoid being pulled into the interaction.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
That's right. You can do that every time. You can just don't even know what you're doing. What you doing? Nothing. Nothing at all. Just taking a moment. And you know what? It's important to operationalize these moments too, because people say take a moment, but you need to do something in that moment. You don't need to just stay mad. Don't just stand over there breathing hard, balling up your fist. That's not what you should spend the time doing. Open your hands up and clench some fists. Breathe through what you're doing. Make it focus on your belly going out and then coming back in. Being intentional about all of these things and breathing exercise. You all have been wonderful. Thank you so very much. We love you. We'll see you soon. We'll send you everything we have. Slides will be posted up. Please do your evaluations. Those are important. You have to scan something to do it.
Thank you.
Thank you all so very much. And we're done. Soul Train Line at dinner. Thank you. All right. You guys enjoy. Oh, go. Am I in your way? Okay, you go. I think I'm ready.